now is the largest lithium deposit in the United States by contained lithium carbonate equivalent and resource, and at 21.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent. That makes it one of the largest deposits globally. So it is a very significant tier one asset that we own 100%.
Hello and welcome to the Market Bull Podcast. Please note, topics and stocks discussed in this podcast are not financial or investment advice. Lindsay Dudfield is the Executive Director and CEO of Jindalee Resources, which is listed on the ASX under code JRL. Now, Lindsay discussed the company's rich history and the project generator model that has allowed it to adapt over the last 20 years. Jindalee Resources, soon to be known as Jindalee Lithium, is focused primarily on lithium exploration in the United States with one of the largest lithium deposits in the world. Lindsay discussed this project in depth and some of the upcoming milestones and news that investors can expect. He also talked about some of the major benefits that are emerging for North American exploration companies and where lithium could be heading. Here is Lindsay Dudfield. So hello, this is the Market Bull Podcast. I'm Ben Kostrich, and joining me today on the show is Lindsay Dudfield, the CEO and Executive Director of Jindalee Resources, which is listed on the ASX and trades on the OTC. The code is JRL. It's his first time joining me on the show, and I'm pleasure to have him on and to talk with me. So welcome, Lindsay.
Yeah, no, great to be here. Thanks, Ben.
So Jindalee Resources, it's 20 years really, or over 21 years since it's been listed, and it's predominantly in the mining frontier and exploration scene, and it's had quite a rich history of, I guess, evolving and changing. But I mean, yourself and your history, you're a geologist, but how have you ventured throughout this, I guess, global mining realm of living in Perth, Western Australia, but working all across the world?
Oh, look, it's pretty interesting, really. I mean, geologists, for the most part, have to be reasonably versatile and flexible and prepared to go to where the opportunities lie, particularly exploration geologists. So I grew up in New Zealand. As soon as I graduated, I headed across to Perth. So I've lived in Perth, based myself here in mineral exploration for more than 40 years now. And look, it's been a fantastic place to be based. We have... In Jindalee, we've obviously looked at opportunities initially in the Eastern Goldfields of Western Australia when we started the IPO back in July of 2002, and then we moved into the Northern Territory and chasing uranium, and then ventured outside of Australia looking for opportunities, and we looked at, people will be amazed some of the projects we looked at. We went across to Brazil and we looked at a zinc deposit that one of the majors was divesting. We went into the Western Sahara, which is immediately south of Morocco, looking at carbonatites that were rich in uranium. We've looked at opportunities all around the world, and currently our major asset is sitting in the United States. So.
Yeah, because when I was going through the story, because it's had such a long history, it's almost evolved and adapted as things have happened. But for those that potentially are unfamiliar with Jindalee Resources and almost its history, I mean, how do you describe what that company is and I guess some of the reasons behind how it's constantly, evolved and adjused itself?
Yeah, so look, mineral exploration is very high risk. Probably most investors don't realise how high risk it is, because they see, for the most part, the successes, which are advertised obviously, and most of the failures are not. So, but being a geologist and I'd already done quite a lot of exploration, with major companies. So when I got involved in juniors and then founded Jindalee, we wanted to have a different model to most of the other groups out there. We wanted to try and if you like, de-risk the chances of failure and enhance the opportunity to succeed. So we became right from pretty well the time we listed, we were a project generator. So we would come up with ideas, acquire ground, and then go out and test the concepts, and always looking for a company making opportunity. But to do that, if you do that and you fund everything yourself, you're going to run out of money pretty quickly, and be continually going back to the market, looking for more funding, and before you know it, particularly if you're going back to the market looking for funding at a time when the market is not conducive to raising capital. You're going to be heavily diluting your shareholders and so on. And so your chances of success as far as a capital gain for your investors is minimised. So right from the get-go, we were partnering our projects that we identified. So our IPO, we had large Canadian mining house Teck. They cornerstoned the IPO. And then, and they were looking for a particular style of gold mineralisation on our tenements, so they came in and joint ventured some of those tenements. We then had majors like Newcrest, for example, also come in and do joint ventures, and we'd always try to back out some of our initial expenditure. In fact, most of it, if we could, as one of the terms of entry into a joint venture with these majors, and then revert to what's called a free carried position, where we didn't have to put our hand in our pocket until a significant discovery was made. And so by doing that, we were able to remain flexible. We're also commodity agnostic, so we could pivot very quickly, and also a very small team. So we could pivot very quickly to where opportunities were, or we could see there could be some opportunities developing, and acquire positions, and then look to test the concept. And if it stacked up, introduce partners. If it didn't, then we'd drop the ground to move on. So
yeah, because the whole history, as you said, over 20 years being listed is almost a feat in itself for a lot of, you'd say, arguably small caps to get to the point where you are, which is again a testament to yourself as one of the original founders, you could say, to getting it where it is. And you've constantly gone through, I guess, ups and downs of commodity cycles as well, and had to pivot. And throughout your time, I mean, staying true to yourself and I guess keeping the company through this direction. I know there's been a big precedent and focus on a tight capital structure as well, which the company's quite proud of. But I mean, how have you done or managed to go on so long and be so successful over a 20-year period where we see exploration companies always having to raise to do things?
Yeah, well, basically that project generator model is how we've managed to keep the capital structure so tight. We've also had really supportive shareholders who have, I guess they were rewarded early on in the company's history. We had a bit of success with one of our spin-outs, and we were also able to pay a dividend to them. And so that, I guess, convinced them that our project generator model was a good model. And so they've been very patient and loyal, and allowed us to the luxury, if you like, of taking a longer-term view of how we generate wealth for our shareholders. I think it would be very hard to do a generator model like ours if you had shareholders who had very short-term expectations and were continually demanding
changing over
news flow and chasing what's popular and so on. I mean, the best opportunities from a project generator point of view, or a project acquisition point of view, is to acquire assets at a time when they're completely out of fashion, and that way you can pick up opportunities, preferably for the cost of an application, so very, very low cost. You can wind up with 100% of the asset, and then you can control the progress of that asset, bring in partners, develop it 100% depending on market conditions and how the project is looking. You have that flexibility, so that's been very important. Having a very supportive shareholder base is a big part of our success, I think.
And I mean, currently it's Jindalee Resources, as it's got its spin-outs and its hands in a few different jars, you could say. We'll talk about those, but the primary focus is North American lithium, especially in the US. And I think for many that, everyone knows lithium, and you guys have got a good staking ground in arguably a great location near a lot of gigafactory developments. There's a lot of tailwinds, government support, but the McDermit Lithium project, can you give us a little bit of insight about what that project is, and knowing that you've got some big plans coming up that have just started. We're recording, midway in October. There's a lot of things starting to happen, but what is that project?
Okay, so McDermit, we own it 100%. It's a project we identified as part of our, if you like, project generator model. And it now is the largest lithium deposit in the United States by contained lithium carbonate equivalent and resource. and at 21.5 million tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent. That makes it one of the largest deposits globally. So it is a very significant tier one asset that we own 100%. So look, it's a great opportunity for our shareholders as we de-risk it, and in that de-risking process, we fully expect that there'll be a significant amount of value added for our shareholders.
So when did you actually acquire that? Because you're talking again about the project acquisition and I guess getting a foothold in some of these projects when they're potentially out of favour. And lithium, you could say that it's had its ups and downs, and there's been moments where no one's wanted to talk about it. But the history of that project, and even again getting it within the portfolio, I mean, when did it all start really? I guess the formation start forming.
Yeah, look, I mean, that's a really good question, and it sort of really came about. We started looking seriously at this style of mineralisation in probably 2017. So look, this is a sediment-hosted lithium deposit. So it's an emerging style of lithium. So everyone's familiar with pegmatites, and Western Australia obviously dominates the global production of lithium from pegmatites, and brines in South America. So they're the two main categories or classes of lithium deposit that are currently being commercially exploited. But the sediment-hosted deposits that are emerging style of deposit, it's very large tonnage, low grade. So we say a lot. They're akin to the porphyry coppers of the lithium world. But how do we get interested in this style of mineralisation? Which I'd call an unconventional style of lithium mineralisation. I was really interested in how the United States transformed its economy very quickly through the development of unconventional hydrocarbons, so shale oil and gas, and that's a pretty amazing story. Quite recent, that happened quite recently, just in the early 2000s. They went from being a major importer of oil and gas. In fact, they had terminals, LNG terminals, built around the coast of the United States for importing LNG, and then within a very short space of time, several years, those terminals are being used to export LNG, and the US is now, I think the largest exporter of natural gas in the world, or certainly right up there, and is pretty well self-sufficient, and so that's kept energy prices down, and has made a major. It's also helped geopolitically as well, because it's reduced their reliance on the Middle East and hydrocarbons from there, and so they've had been able to control their own destiny, to a large extent economically as a result of that, drive down electricity prices and so on. And I could sort of see something very similar happening as in the lithium space, as the United States moved to decarbonise the economy and big emphasis on electrification, and so. Sediment-hosted deposits, which were considered uneconomic and technically high risk and so on, they were an obvious candidate where there could be a complete 180-degree turnaround. Given the right political, financial, technical backdrop. So we had our CEO at the time, Pip Darville, started looking at opportunities for sediment-hosted deposits in the Western US that were an open ground, as I mentioned. Obviously, if you can get the project 100% via application and then control your own destiny from there, that's a much better position than earning into a project, having to make payments to third parties, royalties, and so on. And he identified probably 10 or 12 opportunities. This was early 2018. And then in March, and did a fantastic job. And in March, we jumped on a plane, flew to the US, went and started visiting some of these areas that were on his list, and two of them stood out. We assayed, we sampled the areas, got the lithium results back. Two of them stood out, and they're the two that we staked. So we staked claims. As I said, we own it 100% because it was open ground. When we staked both of these projects, and McDermit in particular. As soon as we drove into the area and started sampling the mesas, the outcropping sediments, we just looked one another and thought, well, if these assays come back anomalous in lithium, this is
we could be onto something pretty good here.
The scale of this was, it was obviously of enormous scale. So, and that's what happened, So the claims were staked April. They were granted to us in June. We then drilled 4 holes at McDermit, just proof of concept holes. So very broad space, 4 holes 2 kilometres apart. So I mean that's really broad space. All 4 holes, even though we had technical issues because the drillers we had weren't really up to scratch. We still managed to drill 90 odd metres from surface, and all 4 holes had basically 90 metres of continuous lithium mineralisation, and so we knew then that the concept had been proved, and from there on it's just been a progressive build out of the resource to where we are today.
Yeah, the opportunity with the US, especially given the electrification, is just unprecedented. It's a good point you mentioned that, when the US sets itself a target of we want to in-house it or, we want to be a distributor and export it, they change their mind very quickly, and all of a sudden the infrastructure starts coming, the government support, all the tailwinds come through, and it's a rapid onset. But if we go back, the McDermit Lithium, you've got, I guess, talking about what you've currently achieved and what you're on the roadmap of getting it up and about and getting it, at the end of the stage, hopefully into a mine, but that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, what stage of that process are you guys at, and what are we really expecting to happen over the next, we're racing towards the end of 2023, but onwards into 2024?
We've as I said, we drilled the first, if you like, proof of concept holes in September 2018. We've now completed 62 holes at McDermit. Each year we've drilled, the resource has just got bigger and bigger. Yeah, and it's still open, I should say. It's, if you have a look at our presentations, it's open out to the west. I think we've drilled one single isolated hole far out in the west. We've got rock chips, that are further out than that have got anomalous lithium values in them. So we're very confident that the lithium-rich sediments extend across, pretty well the whole of our tenement package. And that there's really good potential to grow the project further, but already it's enormous. So what we're doing currently, we're focused on de-risking the project and completing a pre-feasibility study, a PFS. So pretty well everything we're doing currently is with that end in mind, and we hope to have that completed and the results out into the market during the June quarter 2024. So what's going on at the moment? So last year we completed environmental baseline and cultural studies, and I'm happy to report that there were no red flags identified from that work.
That's good. That's good.
No, highly endangered fauna or flora. North American, Indian burial sites or any signs of permanent habitation. So that sort of thing, and we're building on that. We're continuing to build on that and do more work just to increase our knowledge, and I suppose that also helps with the permitting process as well. So that's underway and is ongoing. We've done some metallurgical test work right from the get-go, and so we started this year. We had Fluor, a very well-known American engineering house, and they've got particular expertise in these sediment-hosted deposits because, as I said, they're an emerging class of deposits. So the knowledge base is probably pretty much like what it was for with shale oil and gas, back in the late 1990s before the people really started to seriously look at them. And so they're managing some metallurgical test work. They've identified the preferred flow sheet for the for processing the ore, and we're optimising that. We've got a whole bunch of core currently undergoing test work in Colorado, being supervised by by Fluor. The work's actually being done at Hazen, and we've also got a whole bunch of engineering studies going on. Most of those are being managed by Fluor as well. And what isn't being managed by Fluor, we've got our own in-house engineer who's the project manager for McDermit. And between those studies, we expect to, as I said, have the PFS completed in the June quarter. We've also got some drilling. We've contracted a drill rig. We announced earlier this week, and all going well, we should be drilling on the 1st of November, subject to final government approvals, and that'll be drilling diamond holes to obtain core for geotechnical work, which again feeds into the PFS. I mean, we've already got a lot of core there, but we'd like some more fresh core for testing. So look, there's a lot going on, and behind that there's also community engagement and
all the other points that the company's doing day to day. Yeah.
And we've also applied for US government grants to help assist the funding of some of the studies that we're doing as well.
Is that within the Inflation Reduction Act, or is that outside of other government grants that are for that local area?
No, look, I mean, the US government, you've touched on the Inflation Reduction Act, so that's been law now just over a year, and that's designed in part to enable the US to become as self-sufficient as possible in critical minerals, because at the moment, they import
it all from China, or they're getting it from somewhere else.
There's only one lithium mine currently operating in the United States, and that's in Nevada. It's called Silver Peak. It's owned by Albemarle, who are a very large.
They're a massive player. They've been trying to get Liontown, but that's not happening as it looks.
Yeah, that's right. So look, they're a very big player in the lithium space. That only produces currently around 5,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate equivalent per annum. You mentioned earlier, there's a whole bunch of battery factories. Well, there's already some operating, and there's a whole bunch more
scheduled to be built and developed.
They're under construction or proposed. And one of the foremost analysts of the lithium supply-demand situation is Benchmark Mineral Intelligence, and they've forecast that to feed all of these battery factories, the United States is going to need around 600,000 tonnes of lithium carbonate per annum by 2031. Well, it's only producing 5,000 currently. That might go, to 10,000 as they expand the Silver Peak operation.
But they're a long way off in the total scheme of things.
Exactly. So to try and encourage development of critical minerals projects in the United States and onshore all of the processing of that and so on, there's a lot of money available, particularly under the Inflation Reduction Act, particularly from the Department of Energy. So they've got $40 billion US earmarked for critical minerals projects, but also some of the other US government departments as well. The Department of Defense has also got a budget funding for I'll call it good causes.
I've heard about that for tungsten and some of the other sort of materials in there.
Again, critical minerals, and most people, when they think about lithium, they think of EVs and potentially stationary storage batteries for storing a renewable wind and solar power, but there's also a lot of lithium used in the defence sort of department. Drones, for example, which are now a really big part of warfare, they rely on lithium-ion batteries to power them. Most soldiers, certainly US Army, have body cams and a whole bunch of communication gear. All of that requires lithium. So the Department of Defence is also interested in lithium and securing supplies domestically. So look, there's there is a lot of government support there, federal government support, and it's bipartisan for making sure that critical minerals projects in the United States are developed and that processing, as I said, that processing also takes place in the United States. So.
And I mean, one point that we probably should have clarified as well is when you're looking at the US, I mean, where is the McDermit sort of lithium deposit? Because we sort of talk about US and everyone goes, it's huge. Where exactly are we focused on?
So look, the project straddles the Oregon-Nevada border, so we're looking at the western United States. The deposit currently is wholly within Oregon, but one of the options that has been mentioned is we could always look at developing and mining the deposit in Oregon, clearly, because that's where it is, and then processing it in Nevada. So look, at this stage, the PFS is is going to look at a number of options. We're assuming at this stage that we'll also be processing the material in Oregon. And I should say that this isn't, a case of, say, for example, most of the lithium, I'll call them lithium mines in Australia. There's currently no processing to lithium chemicals taking place in Australia. It is all shipped offshore, mainly to China. And, so it's concentrated, and the spodumene, the lithium-bearing minerals concentrated, and then the spodumene concentrate is sent to China or Japan or Korea for conversion to lithium chemicals. For example, lithium carbonate we mentioned is kind of like the standard lithium chemical. But these projects we're talking about, we're talking about having a mine at the front and then having a chemical processing plant at the back. So, they're very high capex, but you are keeping all of the processing of the product onshore in America. So, from an American point of view, you're creating jobs for Americans from American resources.
And they've got a massive incentive, as we said. The light bulb switch for them, they want it in-house, and they're going to do it. And yeah, the lithium processing side has almost been the crux. Everyone's been exporting it to China and Korea and Japan, and we know WA is at least trying to get up and about and maybe look at doing it like Kwinana, but it's still taking a bit of time. And you just know that the US, with their checkbook and what they want to do, if they want it, they're just going to execute it, and they're just going to pump money into it to get it sorted. But another point, which I thought is interesting when I was going through the slide, was your memorandum of understanding with POSCO. And for many that are familiar with POSCO, it's one of the largest, I guess, battery companies in Korea. But I mean, a little bit on that. I mean, memorandum of understanding is I guess it's the start of conversations for ongoing potential partnerships. But I mean, how did you get those conversations going, and what are they doing? I guess what's the combination or parallels that you guys have got working together?
So we were introduced to POSCO last year, and we shipped them a small sample for testing. And then they came back towards the end of last year and requested a much larger sample. And so there was a bit of toing and froing about, what sort of relationship we would have, and we were determined not to commit any offtake to anyone at this stage, or so enter. I mean, we see that quite a lot. That juniors, you get a bit of a sugar hit from announcing an offtake agreement, but then you've probably really damaged your project by doing that, because you've suddenly reduced all the optionality that you had, and particularly with a project the size of McDermit, we want to preserve as much optionality as possible. So look, we said, we're not prepared to enter into first right of refusal on offtake or project equity or anything at this stage. Well, we're happy to work with you. We'll ship you a large sample for you to do the test work on at your expense, and we'll have like an open book exercise. In parallel with your test work, we'll run our own test work, and that's, as I mentioned, that's what's going on at Hazen in the United States currently. And then we'll, as we go along, we'll compare results. And so, look, they received their sample in April, and they've been, working slowly on it. They are coming from absolute, the bottom left-hand corner of the knowledge curve. So, whereas, I was surprised we actually have, we've learnt a lot already since we acquired the project, and with Fleur on board as well, that's really given us a lot more confidence about the processing of these materials, and the work that's currently underway too will also, add a lot more value there and intellectual knowledge. So look, we've had to, there's been a few conversations about, the best way to beneficiate our ore, for example, because that's a pretty important way to add value to the exercise, and so we're also in the process of beneficiating some ore for them. So we sent them a raw sample, and we're now going to be sending them some beneficiated ore as well, so they can do their leach test work on that. So things have gone more slowly than I would have expected, but they're also, they're very careful. They've got some very smart young metallurgists who said, very low, starting at the bottom of the learning curve, but they're learning very quickly. And at the end of this phase of test work, we'll sit down and have a chat.
Reevaluate what things are happening.
Decide, where to from here, next steps. So, and you'd say, well, why are you involved with POSCO? POSCO are a Korean company. Well, first of all, they're very, very determined to be as big in battery materials as they currently are in steel. But they're determined to become very, very big in battery materials. And they've got a relationship with General Motors, whereby they will supply, or they do supply, cathode active materials, so which includes lithium as part of the cathode, to General Motors. And so, you can see that this could become, if they decide to proceed with, some sort of involvement with McDermit, could become the feedstock for a battery factory, which is then supplying lithium-ion batteries to General Motors. So.
Yeah, I think that's why it sort of tweaked my mind, because when I flash back to speaking with QPM, Dr. Stephen Grocott, he was talking about the GM, POSCO, and then now knowing that, again, you've got a facility, or you've got an area in the US, GM have got some ridiculous quotas to hit of their electric vehicles, and suddenly it's all just, these dots are starting to align of, all these car manufacturers are starting to look at mines and lithium and access to critical materials. But another part of the company is the Clayton North project, which is, I guess, another sort of project that you've got on the books. But can you talk a little bit about what that project is?
Well, that was the second project that we identified when we first went over there in March 2018. After we got the assay results back from our sampling there, confirmed that we had lithium-enriched sediments at surface there. But it's kind of been in the shadow of McDermit, because pretty well all of the work that we've done to date has taken place at McDermit. For obvious reasons, we've been getting fantastic results there, and as I said, the project has just grown and grown, and obviously it's now a highly strategic asset. But in 2021, we drilled 6 diamond drill holes at Clayton North. I should say that it's in Nevada. It's located about 20 kilometres, just over 20 kilometres to the north of the Silver Peak operation that I mentioned.
Close proximity, right? Yeah, so it's that big one. Gotcha.
Yeah, so it's in the vicinity of currently the only lithium producer in the United States. And it's good infrastructure. Nevada is known as being a very mining-friendly jurisdiction. There's lots of electricity and power lines everywhere, and roads and small towns and
full
so
infrastructure
on.
And mining.
Yeah, infrastructure's very good, and with as I said, with a pro mining sort of mentality as well, and it's within a very short distance of an operating lithium mine anyway. So and there are lithium deposits around the district as well, sediment-hosted deposits. So that drilling we intersected, we confirmed that the sediments hosting the lithium continue at depth, and that's basically been the sum of it. We haven't been back there and done any work since then, because
been preoccupied with McDermit.
We have been. We've put all of our energy and funding into McDermit, because that's an enormous prize. But having said that, we just recently we've gone and blown the dust off the Clayton North files, and we want to go back and drill some more holes there, and we think there's unfinished business there. But look, I don't want the viewers to get the impression that this is going to be another McDermit, because at this stage anyway, it doesn't appear to have the same scale as McDermit, but it could be a strategic add-on, particularly for one of our neighbours in the district, if we were able to come to some sort of commercial arrangement. So.
Yeah, and that's what my sort of gist was after watching a few of your presentations and looking on the website, that the focus has been McDermit, and there's a lot of effort going into that, just given the size and what it can be. And I think that's going to be where you've got to prioritise. You said at the outset, like a small team, you've got to prioritise everyone's time. And at the beginning, we talked about Jindalee being very unique in its project generation and almost spin-offs. And I mean, for listeners that are probably looking at Jindalee and going, oh, it's a pure play lithium but they haven't thought about potentially some of the other, interests that you guys have had and some of the successful spin-offs you've had. I mean, what has been a part of that, portfolio almost in a way, and what are the other companies that Jindalee has got, footholds in, as you said, that agnostic, almost the commodity outlook?
Yeah, so look, I mean, we've gone to where the opportunities have been. At the end of the day, our role is to make money for our shareholders, quite frankly. Doing what we know well, we do best, if you like, which is generating mineral projects. Hopefully one of those projects, hopefully it's McDermit, it appears to be, will have the ability to completely transform the company. But along the way, you kiss a few frogs before you find the prince or princess in this case.
Love that analogy.
Yeah, and we've got very high expectations. So when we've identified opportunities that maybe don't meet, our high expectations, but which are useful or of interest to other parties, we're happy to do it, as I mentioned, a joint venture right from the start, right from day one of listing. We were involved in joint ventures with Teck, and we've continued that all the way through. Whilst we look for the company making opportunity. So you mentioned the spin out. So probably our most successful spin out was Energy Metals. To date, I should say, because we've got another one that we did earlier this year, which has got the potential to perform very well also. And Energy Metals, when was it? 2004. So not long, a couple of years after listing, we identified uranium as having potential, uranium in Australia, and had been completely overlooked for a long time. So we went and again, applied for applications and over areas in the Northern Territory and Western Australia, which had historic uranium occurrences, deposits. One of them actually had a high-grade deposit that was discovered in the 1970s, and it was just sitting there unloved. And so we picked up a huge land holding in this area, the Nalia Basin, and we then, in a subsidiary company, and then when was it? Must have been about September, I think, 2015, that subsidiary listed as Energy Metals, and that was a priority entitlement to Jindalee shareholders, a 25% IPO, and Jindalee retained 40% of Energy Metals issued capital. And it was very successful. The timing, a lot of it was to do with timing. Timing was great. 25-cent shares opened at 75, and I think they went up to about $8.50 or something before we did.
Yeah, you'd be pretty wrapped as a shareholder.
Yeah. But those that took up the priority entitlement did really well. But even those that didn't, they had an indirect interest in Energy Metals, through their shareholding in Jindalee, because Jindalee had 40% of the issued capital of the company. So, and then we did a share split, and long story short, during the GFC, we received a friendly cash takeover from the China Guangdong Nuclear Power Company. It's now called China General Nuclear, or CGN. It's the largest nuclear power company in the world, makes nuclear power plants and so on. And that was, enabled, it was a very good, payout for Jindalee with 40% of the issued capital. So we had to pay a lot of tax, unfortunately, but that's the way it goes. And then we returned most of the remaining funds to shareholders via a fully franked dividend. That was a 55-cent fully franked dividend. And during the GFC,
that's a pretty helpful thing to have during the GFC.
Cash was keenly sought after, and so our shareholders were pretty wrapped with that. But we kept enough cash back to fund our ongoing activities, looking for the next opportunity. And as I said, I believe that opportunity is in front of us now, and that's McDermit. But it was a proportional takeover from CGN for 70% of each holder's holding. So we still had 30% of our original holding, and so that's we've made some sales over time, but we still hold about 5% of Energy Metals. I think we're the third largest shareholder still. So our shareholders, apart from having the direct opportunity to participate in the Energy Metals spin out, have also had we've still got a minor now, I'd say, indirect interest in Energy Metals and what it's doing, and it's doing really good work on its Bigley project, the lead asset in the Northern Territory. And then in January, we spun out all of our Australian mineral assets via a company called Dynamic Metals. So that listed mid-January. It was a $7 million IPO, $7 million IPO. So some of the funding that was received in the IPO came back to Jindalee, so that helped top up our working capital. And we're the largest shareholder. We've retained 25% of the company. So we sold all of our West Australian, or mainly West Australian. There's also an asset in Tasmania as well, a magnesite deposit. But we sold all of that to Dynamic for shares in the company. Again, it was a priority entitlement to Jindalee shareholders. And those shareholders that chose not to take up their entitlement still have the opportunity or indirect exposure to Dynamic via their Jindalee holding, because, as I said, we own 25% of the company. So.
Yeah, and even, throughout its time, it's kept a very tight capital structure, and that's been, again, paramount to its success. And, we're recording today, and you probably can't go into many of the details, but Thursday, the 12th of October, Jindalee's in a trading hold at least, and I'm sure by the time this has come out, there may be some more information, or at least in the coming days. But is there anything you can sort of talk about? What's going through there, and what are the plans? Without breaching probably ASX announcement sort of things like that.
Yeah, no, look, what I can say is, based on the information that's out in the public domain today, which is very little, that we're in a trading hold for a capital raising. And given our track record, you can, I think, take it as read that there'll be an opportunity for as part of the capital raising, extended a priority opportunity extended to Jindalee shareholders. We think that the share price doesn't reflect the true value of the company, and particularly the McDermit asset. But obviously, to get to the point where we can make that true value of McDermit more obvious to investors, we need to complete the PFS. And so we want to make sure that we've got enough funding to see us through to that stage. We also, it won't be a big raise because we're hopeful, I can't guarantee it, but we're hopeful that we'll also receive US government funding in one form or another.
That's what you touched on at the beginning of the episode as
well.
For
McDermit. But we've got no idea at this stage about the quantum of that funding, though I had a chat last night with one of our advisors in the US, and he's who's helping us with this process, and he's quietly confident that there is funding on the way, and that we're in a really good position to be successful with our application, but we can't we can't bank that just yet. So we're just topping up working capital and giving our shareholders the opportunity to participate. So
that makes a bit of sense, and I think that goes, as you said, the track record of what the company's done. And throughout your time, there's clearly been a team around you, and I always say that it's really the team is almost one of the most important aspects, and all CEOs and MDs talk about this as well. But for you, throughout your time, you've probably had people come and go, but at least at the moment, you've probably got a core group of people that have been quite paramount in helping Jindalee Resources. So, who's been a part of the team, and why are they so potentially unique, and who are they, and where are they based? Because we're sitting here in Perth, and you've got teams in the US and everything.
Yeah, well, look, currently the board is every member of the board lives in Perth. So our chairman, Justin Manolini, he's been with us, it must be 10 years now. He's a lawyer, but he's had merchant banking experience, and he's very highly qualified and very smart guy, and he's got an amazing work ethic. So he's been really a key asset of the company. We had our company secretary, Trish. She was with us for 20 years. She retired at the start of this year. But 20 years is a long time.
That's a long stint. That's from the origins, really, isn't it?
Especially with a little junior company like Jindalee, and compatibility is a big part of the equation. For a small team, for everyone to work well, you've all got to get on well, and you've got to have complementary skills, and personalities as well, for that matter. You can't all be the same. You've got to have some crazy ideas, and that's where Pip was good. Pip, he went and became the MD of Sepa Resources. He just recently stepped down, but he had some crazy ideas, and he'd have 10 crazy ideas. two of them would go with, you know.
Yeah,
But
you got to pick
that's
some of
right.
them.
And I'm a
Yeah,
bit more conservative. I'm more steady. So you need that kind of those dynamics. So I mentioned Justin is our chairman. We've got two non-executive directors. Darren Waits, who's a lawyer with lithium experience from Neometals, who have operated the Mount Marion lithium mine, brought in partners, basically have stepped out of that completely to focus on
the battery
primarily
stuff.
recycling
Yeah.
lithium
And I
batteries.
spoke with Chris Reed literally about that exact
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
And look, I think that's it's a really good forward-thinking approach. Again, that's outside of the normal mould. As I said, we're a little bit different to most Australian junior explorers in the way we've approached things, and I think Neometals again have done they've taken a different approach, and I think ultimately that'll reap major benefits for their shareholders. But again, it's a patience game and partnering. They've got some it looks like one really good partner, a German partner for the European onslaught, if you like, of recycling lithium-ion batteries. So Darren, has been closely involved with Neometals, and Paul Brown, who's our other non-executive director with lithium experience, and he, was until not that long ago headed up Mineral Resources lithium division. So he's a mining engineer, hands-on lithium experience. So it brings a skill set to the board that we didn't have before, which was a hands-on operating experience. So that's good. And then we got Carly Tizanidis, who replaced Trish, who 20 years standing, who retired at the start of this year, and Carly stepped up and is doing a really good job there. And then in the US we've got only two employees. Look, I'm a big believer in having small teams, and then turning on and off consultants and people with expertise as you need them.
Bring them on as you require and see fit. Yeah,
because it's very expensive to have. What you've got to do as a junior is keep your overheads really low, and also I'm a big believer in incentivising our people through skin in the game. Having equity, options, out of the money options in Jindalee is part of their remuneration, so we can keep the cash, component low, and if we're successful, the share price rises, none of our shareholders are going to begrudge
the team putting in the hard work as well. Yeah,
exactly. They've got to be rewarded. So in the US, we've got a really good head geologist, if you like. He's actually our country manager, Brett Marsh. He's our VP Exploration and Development, and then we've got a really smart geologist, senior geologist, Rebecca Ball, and those two are basically our only two full-time employees in the United States currently. But they're backed up by a team of consultants and technical experts. As we mentioned, you turn them on and off as you need them to basically make sure that you retain your cash and don't need to go back to the market too often. So.
Yeah, well, I think this entire chat, it's been very comprehensive. When I was looking at the time before, I was like, time gets away with you when you're talking. And I know lithium has got, you could almost say the seasonality component. I don't know how to really phrase it. It's been going down this year, but the big picture just presents such a huge opportunity. And I think so many people have probably been frustrated with some of the lithium prices recently. But when you look at, the tailwinds, the genuine supply demand that's occurring, that there's no doubt you're going to need to have lithium mines brought online and further lithium supply coming in. And I think that's where, as we said, Jindalee is quite strategically placed, given it's potentially one of the largest ones in the US, and with all the gigafactory, all the tailwinds, the grants, it's an interesting place to be. And you probably you have talked about what we can expect over the next couple of months. But if there's top three things that investors can expect in potentially the next 12 months, if I'd like to say it that way, what can we really expect coming out and being completed?
Well, I think the completion of the PFS will be a watershed moment for the company, because that'll be for the first time we'll be able to convey the potential production metrics of the project. So how much lithium carbonate could we produce per annum? over how many decades, because we're looking here at a very, very long mine life. And also the financial metrics that accompany that as well. And you're bearing in mind that, as I said, this is part of the de-risking process. There's a project 35 k's to our south, I might have touched on it, Thacker Pass, owned by a company called Lithium Americas. They just recently spun out their Argentinian assets, so Lithium Americas is now a pure play US lithium company focused on Thacker Pass. We're a pure play US lithium company focused on McDermit. They have done fantastic work de-risking Thacker Pass to the point where it's now under construction, and they've got a market cap of around about 2.9 billion Aussie, with offtake agreements in place with General Motors, and the likelihood of a major loan from the Department of Energy to finance the bulk of their capex for the phase one of the Thacker Pass project. Sounds like it's pretty imminent if you look at their announcements. Our market cap's currently around 100 million Aussie. So that gives us a bit of
upside potential. You'd say,
a bit of a sighter on where we could go, assuming that we complete the de-risking process to the stage that the Thacker Pass project is at. So I'd also, apart from the work that we do, and there'll be all these announcements that are focused around the work that's leading up to the completion of the PFS. I'd also look to see how Thacker Pass are going, and if they're because I'm seeing some really interesting analysts' reports on what they think that Lithium Americas could potentially be valued at. So look, I'd keep an eye on them. I'd also keep an eye on from our point of view on any financial or otherwise support from both state and federal governments, so Oregon, Nevada, and obviously the US federal agencies like the Department of Energy and the Department of Defence. I think we've got our fingers crossed that we'll be the recipients of some sort of financial assistance from the US government, and really it's. There aren't any wildcards other than that.
No, I like to say 3 because people like to remember things in 3, but that is plenty. And when I think about, where Tesla's got to with its gigafactories, it's a different aspect of it. But a lot of how they got to where they were came from government funding in some regards. And that's how it gets there, because you do require a huge amount of CapEx, but there is a lot happening. And I appreciate you taking the time today. We've ticked nearly an hour off on the episode, and I hope people have appreciated learning about Jindalee and can follow it. But for those that are now interested in the story and want to stay on top of all the news flow and what's happening, where can they go to stay in contact with Jindalee?
Okay, so look, first of all, we're listed on ASX, as you mentioned at the start. Our code's JRL. We also trade on the OTC. I think it's JNDAF, I think is the code, but you'll get that if you go to ASX and look at our announcements. We've got a website, jindalee.net. That's another good source of information. If you've got any queries, we've got inquiry at jindalee.net. Flick us an email, and between probably Carly and myself, we'll respond to
Someone
you.
will get back to you.
Exactly. And we're a small company. We'd love more investors, particularly high net worths or family offices or just mums and dads, that want to put a few Jindalee shares away, and hopefully, given our tight capital structure, which we kind of didn't mention it, but currently we've got just under 58 million shares on issue, which for a company that's been listed 21 years,
it's quite phenomenal and
pretty
quite
amazing.
an achievement.
It is pretty amazing, actually. But what that does, that provides leverage. So on success. So if we are able to track the growth that we hope we can track, and we've got a similar number of shares on issue, and we've got a market cap of $3 billion in a few years' time, that gives us a share price of around $50. So that's even if we achieve a fraction of that, we think there's a lot of upside there, and would love to have more investors hopefully sharing in that upside with us. So.
Yeah, I'd say lithium has got just so much tailwinds, and there's a lot of boxes being ticked, at least from the discussions we've had. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to speak on the show, Lindsay. And I know there's the social pages as well. There's no shortage of ability to get to news, and you'll be at a bunch of events, I'm sure, that are coming up. But yeah, thank you for taking the time to speak with me on the show today.
My pleasure, Ben. Nice to chat. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Market Bull podcast. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe. You can follow The Market Bull on our socials at Twitter and LinkedIn by searching The Market Bull. You can also subscribe to our newsletter on the website by visiting www.themarketbull.com.au.